I'm Dr. William Elizondo, and I was born in California, in Los Angeles, California in 1930, but I've been in San Antonio all my life, actually. I worked in my dad's grocery store all the extra time that I had besides being in school. So consequently, I knew nothing about anything outside of San Antonio. It was an idea that just prevailed at the time, and it was something that we kind of cherished and enjoyed because this was a family life. Growing up in the grocery store, I had to work in the morning before I went to school, get up at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, then go to school at 8 o'clock. We're able to come home at noon and eat in about 10 minutes and work in our grocery store for about 30 minutes, then go back to the school at Collins Garden Elementary. My mom and dad owned the store, and the store opened up since 6 or 6:15 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. And it was every day. It was 7 days a week. So we had to provide some kind of assistance or help in the store, whether it was stocking shelves, taking care of vegetables and fruits and so on, or taking care of the meat and doing different things that needed to be done, sweeping the place, selling watermelons eventually, and doing a lot of things that needed to be done as far as a grocery store is concerned. Went to high school in Brackenridge High School. I was in the ROTC, and that helped us a lot because they were able to provide you clothes that you'd have to wear 4 days out of the week. The one day you could wear what's called civilian clothes, but the other days you wore your ROTC uniform, and I became a captain as I went through the different 4 years in high school. And it was a very inspiring kind of activity because I had never been able to use a gun or have any activity as far as military is concerned, and it helped me a lot in the Marines when I went in the Marine Corps when I was 18 years of age, and it helped me tremendously to have been in ROTC. When I went in the Marine Corps, we were in boot camp in San Diego, California. There was about 80 men in the Marine Corps, and of course it was a situation where you woke up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and went till 10 o'clock at night, lights out after 10 o'clock, and then you had your 5 or 6 hours of sleep at night. You polished your shoes, and then anything that you needed to after 10 o'clock at night, take a shower and so on. But they really toughened you up, and it was a 12-week course. And we also went to the rifle range in Camp Pendleton, California, and that's where I learned how to shoot. I became a sharpshooter in the Marine Corps. And but you learn about the machine guns, you learn about all the different guns and activity as far as shooting different weapons. After the Marine Corps, I went back to school. I was in the second year of college, and then they called me back into the Korean War. The Korean War was in effect in 1950. Went back in, and we went back for some extra training in Camp Pendleton, California, and they shipped us right out to California. We went over on the boat. That took us about 12 or 13 days to travel on the boat. 6,000 Marines on a boat. And the unfortunate thing is when we were coming back, we only had 4,000 Marines as an average. So you lost somewhere around a third of the Marine Corps somewhere, whether it's because they got killed or maimed or because they had to come back for one reason or the other, but we lost a lot of men in the Korean War. And then at that time went to work at the post office, and then continued on my education and went down to school and so on. Then I went to California, got my doctorate degree in the Southern California College of Optometry, where I graduated cum laude. That I didn't think that could be done, but it was done. I am a therapeutic optometrist and glaucoma specialist, and those types of awards were given to me through the years, of course, and of course we had to work for them. We had to go to the University of Houston as a result of that after I obtained my optometry doctorate degree. But it was something that went into private practice. I went in the Houston building, old Houston building, and where we were right next to U.S. Representative Henry V. Gonzalez. I was his next door neighbor. So I learned a lot about public life as a result of it, because I knew his ins and outs. And of course, I had helped him in his campaign in 1956. And later on, that's when I was able to help President Kennedy in 1960, and I became part of the Viva Kennedy clubs and helped a lot in that. And that's what allowed me to become very acquainted with the people within the JFK administration. We registered people, because at that time people had to pay to vote. You had to pay $1.75, what was called a poll tax. And so we had to go out and ask people to pay $1.75 to be able to vote. Other than that, they couldn't vote. And of course, you had to be an American citizen and so on. But it was hard to sell those votes, because at that time people were making 50 and 75 cents and $1 an hour at that time. And so it was tough to plunk out $1.75 just to be able to have the availability of being able to vote. When I became LULAC president in 1961, the right-hand man of President Kennedy was sent down for my installation. I was installed by Arthur Goldberg, who was U.S. Secretary of Labor at the time, and he was what they call the right-hand man of the President Kennedy. So I was able to get together with him and some of the top advisors and people at that time. So I became very close to the Kennedy administration during that time, and later on the Johnson administration, because of the activity that we performed during those elections, during those years. In 1963, I was fortunate enough to be elected as a national health director, National LULAC health director in Anaheim, California. And about 5 months later, he was coming through San Antonio and through Texas. And when he came through San Antonio, then from here he went to Houston. And so during that time, we had a get-together, a lit party for him and his entourage, him and Vice President at the time, Lyndon Johnson. So all four of them, they and their wives were there. We had a lit party for them. This had never, a sitting president had never been with a Hispanic organization prior to that time. That was the first time. So we were able to meet with him, and I was able to talk to him about four different activities, four different items that I talked to him. One of them is to try to get rid of the poll tax, for example, and things like that at that time. But also I wanted to talk to him about the HUD thing that I mentioned to you. I had written him a letter in 1961 that he ought to have a cabinet position named HUD, Housing and Urban Development, which we didn't have at the time. And so we didn't have a Housing and Urban Development cabinet position until later on in 1965. So we were able to have been able to at least recommend that early on, which was one of the nice things about being able to be a part of an administration, because that and other things that we started a program called SER, S-E-R, Service and Education Redevelopment, so that we could have a pool of people that would be ready and available for work in San Antonio, which we didn't have at the present time. And SER is, even at this point, they're now over 50 years old, and they're still functioning and still serving the community, serving the state of Texas. LULAC stands for League of United Latin American Citizens. It was an organization that was started back in 1929 and to serve primarily the Hispanic community. And I was elected president, just happened to have been able to be elected at that time. And I ran against a person that had been in LULAC for about 15 years and fortunate to get elected at that time. There was only one LULAC group at the time, the San Antonio LULAC it was called. So it had a lot of authority, a lot of interest in the community, and we were able to take care of a lot of local problems that existed at the time. For example, when I was president, we got rid of tuberculosis, TB, for example. It was very rampant at the time. We were able to get a lot of other programs that helped the Hispanic community that was invaluable, and that I did during my presidency. In San Antonio, we had several school districts, about 15 or 16 school districts in Bexar County. San Antonio School District being the largest and was the largest at the time. We had about 60 to 65,000 students. At that time, I was noticing that there was the persons that were coming to work in my office so didn't know how to add and subtract. And yet they would tell me, look, but I've got my diploma from the San Antonio School District. But they couldn't add 5 and 7, for example. Or they couldn't subtract 3 from 8, just off the top of their head. And I was concerned about that and a lot of other things I had heard. And the level of education was pretty low. So I decided in 1974 that something needed to be done. And that's when I decided to run against the big powers that be that controlled that and controlled all of the things in San Antonio and Bexar County, which at that time the powers that be did not want me to run, and they told me that I wasn't qualified and that I couldn't run and all that kind of thing. But I was able to go ahead and do so. After checking in with the wife, I was able to say, okay, we're going to need to do it because it needs to be done, even though I had a full-time practice and was very busy. I felt as if that was my obligation because I had been in about 12 or 15 organizations by that time on board of trustees and board of managers of one thing or another. But we weren't really addressing a lot of the problems. And I felt as if we needed to get to a place where the action was actually taking place, and it was taking place either in school boards or in city council or in the state legislature. So I decided I needed to stay in my practice, be able to stay here and continue seeing patients, but also being able to do that as a part-time thing. And incidentally, they used to tell me, well, it's only going to take about 15 minutes a day, once or twice a month. The meetings were from 1 to 1:15 in the afternoon. But later on, we changed all of that and did a lot of other things. That we opened up the school district and did some things that we can talk about if necessary. But brought in a lot of different programs that were very, very valuable to the students of San Antonio. First plank on my platform was the fact that we needed to provide a quality education for students. And so that was my theme throughout my tenure in the school district. And besides a lot of other things. So we needed to kind of change that. And during that time, for example, during the first of all, I was able to, at that time, be able to be a candidate and also won and beat the then president of the school board by twice as many votes as the then school board president. So it gave me a great deal of satisfaction to be able to have done that. But other than that, during my first 2 years of being on the school board, I could not even pass a resolution that would state, we shall provide a quality education for our students. It was voted down twice, in the spring of 1975 and then in the fall of 1975. So at that time I decided we're going to have to go out and find some people that are amenable to changing the system, changing the guard in a sense, and being able to bring in some people that want to do something for the students. So therefore we obtained a couple of qualified people, and by 1976 we brought in 2 new people, and at that time we brought in quality education in April of 1976. Once I became president, it was easier to have done a lot more things besides the quality education. The program was called the Multilingual School. In that program we had people like Joaquin Castro, which is a congressman now. We also had the former mayor of San Antonio, Julian Castro, his twin brother, and other people just like them that went through the program that really helped them. One of them took the language for Russia. The other one studied Japanese, which means to broaden their horizons. And that's what the idea was at that time, to broaden people's horizons, look at other countries, and also bring in the different languages other than just the bilingual programs that we had at the time, and French and German and a few others that we had within the multilingual program. Besides that, we also had things like the pre-engineering program. We had brought in things like the mariachi program. The mariachi program was a very important one at the time, and we had a lot of opposition by the administration at the time. They didn't want us to bring in the mariachi program because they felt that it might look bad as far as the school district. But we were able to convince our board members at the time, and I was able to make sure that we passed the mariachi program, and we were the first school district in San Antonio and the state of Texas to have a mariachi program. We brought in a lot of other programs like the kindergarten program, where we brought in all 5-year-olds in a kindergarten program at the time that nobody else had. And we started students, if they were 5 years old, they entered into the kindergarten program early in life, because many of them were deficient in a lot of the areas of language and different things. So this way that they could at least get propelled to get ready for first grade. We brought in the swimming program. We brought in the water polo program, which we didn't have at the time. We brought in the soccer program. Also, we didn't have the soccer program, and because that way you could not only have a lot of young folks that weren't big and tall and husky to be able to be in football or basketball, even though our sons, all 3 of them, were in all of those sports. But and we got criticized for bringing in the soccer program, but that was okay. But you could also include young ladies into soccer programs, which we have now. We were the first school district to have it, and other school districts in the county entered into the soccer program. And then I recommended at that time to the superintendent when we were going to have a UIL program, and it became a UIL a sport, after that year. And so now it's a UIL sport for the whole state of Texas as a result. We also stopped the smoking in the schools. At that time, all the kids were in school were smoking all day long. They could smoke in the halls anytime they're in the hall. And so we were the first school district that stopped smoking in the schools. Probably the most significant thing is the 10-year educational goals plan that we had during those years, where we increased the level of education for the students about 1 grade level, 2 grade levels above the normal as far as what they were doing at the time. Consequently, those 60,000 students obtained a better education during those years, and now are better citizens as a result of it, because they obtained a greater education, greater background, and consequently, I think that they're greater citizens as a result of it. But the other things that we also did during those years is to have been on the Board of Trustees of the hospital district board, which is called University of Health System. And the primary thing that we did that was most significant is the fact that we kept the Board of Regents out of Austin to keep them from selecting and obtaining the hospital administrator locally of Bexar County, for them to select them, because they wanted to be the ones to select them and be the hospital administrator for San Antonio, which we thought wasn't the right thing. And of course, the other things that were great and were wonderful in our background, our capability back in those days, is to have been a part of history, being the ringside eye doctor for the Oscar de la Hoya fight, having been selected by the U.S. Space Agency to go see the landing of the rover on Mars in Pasadena, California, as being the only Texan doing that, and of course also obtaining the Ambassador for Peace Medal out of Korea and the 50th year commemoration committee that was awarded to us at that time in Seoul, Korea. And the Korean government, of course, also was a participant in that. And then the other thing that was very significant is having obtained the Dr. William Elizondo Endowed Scholarship out of the University of Houston. Those are some of the key things that we think that are important for San Antonio. This exemplifies the mathematics and reading that we had in San Antonio, and you can see the greatest gains that we had in some of those years. It increased the level of education dramatically during those years, something that hadn't been ever done before and hasn't been done since, because the education was so low that we brought it up to at least national standards and above. And so we were very proud of those achievements during those years. They could feel honored to be able to be there with these type of persons. For example, we have Brian Carol Burnett, Roger Staubach, Charles Duke, the Apollo, with the Apollo mission, who was a pilot for the Apollo mission, and the youngest pilot to walk on the moon, and Justine Bateman. I don't know if you ever heard of her, but she was on Family Ties way back then. And so I was able to go out and recruit and bring them in to be the primary speakers at a function at the Alamo Stadium. But they had to be selected from 4 different categories. You know, most improved, best grades, being in school. For example, if they went to school every day, kind of had no misses and all that. And there's one other fourth, I forget what the other fourth one was. And but things like that were involved, I think, in the community, or involved in the things. I think. Well, we've been very fortunate to have gotten many different awards, not only locally from the Bexar County District Optometric Society, but also from the state of Texas. We got the biggest award, the Distinguished Service Award, that I received a couple of years ago from the Texas Optometric Association, which is a very highly coveted award. And then also about 20 years ago, back in 2003 or so, we received the Key Person of the Year award by the American Optometric Association. First time a Texan receives that kind of award. And so we're very proud of a South-Sider from San Antonio to have received those kinds of awards. And so these are some of the things. 2 years ago, the University of Houston at the College of Optometry gave me the Volunteer of the Year award. I was the only one honored that time at the graduation ceremonies. And so it was very kind of them to put us in their book, you know, for all the graduation ceremonies. And the dean at the school over there was the one that praised the people from San Antonio, which really included me. And my wife was there, of course, with us. And it was a very beautiful occasion at that time. The scholarship that was instituted by the Bexar County District Optometric Society and the University of Houston was something that they did in collaboration one with the other back in 2013. And it was quite an honor because they presented it at a time after they had done it. They presented it at one of our local meetings of the Bexar County District Optometric Society. And it was quite an honor. Now we have students graduating from over there. It's got some money in it. We have somewhere near $100,000 in it. I'm not sure exactly how much, but it's something. And they have my picture on the wall out there, Dr. William Elizondo Endowed Scholarship, which I think is a tribute to San Antonio and San Antonians per se. I think the most proud of, I think, is the fact that my wife stayed with us through the whole years, all of the activities, after hours, nights and Sundays and holidays, and then the family, the sons, still being able to accomplish their goals and mission, and still being able to be awarded different things and been involved in a lot of different things. As you know, we mentioned about the fact that they have, all 3 of them have an international connection. One was an international pentathlete, one was in World Masters Championship swimming, the other one was, it wrote up a thesis in a neurology journal when he was at Harvard, for example. So to me, those are probably the most rewarding things. I think possibly the energy level that I've had through the years. Had I not have had the energy level, I couldn't have gone through 4, 5, and 6 hour nights because after I went on the school board, I had a lot of meetings, a lot of different activities all the time. So my day started at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning rather than at 7 or 7:30. And then it went on past at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening when I was in my practice. It went on to 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock meetings. For example, one of the nights that I came home is the time that I brought 2 ladies that came to the house. That's when we were talking about the mariachi program. and they were able to not necessarily convince me, because I was already convinced that we were going to have the mariachi program in the school district, but they knew of the opposition that we were having from the administration, and they definitely didn't want it. And we had some people on the board that didn't want it, so I was able to get enough votes to be able to pass it and be able to do the things we did, because a lot of the things that we did passed on a 4-3 vote. To the high school graduating class, I would say, hopefully they have learned everything in life that they should have learned, and then hopefully that they're going to aspire to do many different things, that they have been propelled into an idea or a vocation or profession or an activity in their life that has sparked some energy, sparked the idea of this is what they want to do in life. And if that has been done during the last few years in their schooling, and they can utilize it or use it, then it will have done great things from them. The day that President Kennedy was assassinated, we heard it on the radio, and I couldn't believe it. I was in my office seeing patients, and I immediately closed down the office and canceled all the rest of the patients. That was on a Friday afternoon, as I recall, and then closed down any patient we were going to see on Saturday, because we used to have Saturday appointments. And we just went into mourning, and just really couldn't do anything. It was just such a shock and such a tremendous. It seemed like someone kind of hit you in the gut of your stomach and pounded you real bad. I would have never thought in my life that a person from the south side of San Antonio, growing up the way that we did, having the meager things that we did, even though my dad had a small grocery store, that we would have a chance to meet a sitting president. But it was something that was very encouraging. It was very delightful. It was something that I pass on to people now, and people almost can't believe it. The fact that we have a person from San Antonio that met him